This is Luke Paulson, the Catholic Conservative, and welcome to the news of the week for August 30th, 2025. And if you enjoy these videos, do not forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe for more. Liberals condemn prayer. There was another mass shooting. It breaks my heart. But instead of blaming the deranged maniac who did this, liberals are again blaming the weapon. They're even condemning people for praying about it. For the record, the Nazis targeted Christians and the right to own guns. The shooter had multiple anti-Semitic messages, and even a message threatening an assassination of a sitting president. This gunman planned this out to cause as much damage as possible. We now know that this person was also transgender, and as we have seen, a large number of mass shooters have been on the spectrum. Maybe we need to condemn the shooter, the institutions that condemned him for being a straight white male, and those who perpetuate this gender ideology. I have no witty transition, but this next story is much lighter in tone. Volunteer hours for welfare. 20 hours a week is not a very long time. Over a typical 5-day work week, that is only 4 hours per day. Or if you worked every day, as some people have to do to pay their bills, that is less than 3 hours a day. There is a new push to make people who are on welfare have to work for some of it. However, they do not have to work 40+ hours a week to barely break even like the rest of us. These people only have to volunteer 20 hours. This is on top of all of the things that they already get at no cost to them. This was originally proposed under the Clinton administration. People at the time realized that if people could get paid while doing nothing, eventually people will be on this system for generations. The best work program is a job, and the purpose of welfare should be to incentivize people to get off of welfare. Furthermore, if you rob Peter to pay Paul, you can always count on Paul's vote. Now, speaking of people who have plenty to eat, let us go to the people of Gaza. Restaurants in Gaza. Most people skip over YouTube ads. I do not. Not only because it sometimes gives me quick news updates or perspectives, but because it helps that creator, and I can just watch in a different tab while it goes on. One advertisement that I saw described how there was food in Gaza. I was very skeptical, but I actually watched it. Here's the advertisement.
Real footage of food scene in Gaza City, July 2025.
نستقبلكم اليوم حبايبنا لازم كلازوني خضار وكلازوني لحمه وكلازوني كلامان بيجوا باذن الله وجعنا لكل الناس.
I then fact-checked it, and there are a lot of restaurants where people can casually dine. If they can casually dine, there is plenty of food. Hamas is only putting missile launchers next to schools, hospitals, and playgrounds, as this is where they get the most sympathy. You do not get as much sympathy from a restaurant. Combine this with Hamas stealing the aid that Israel gives to the civilians, and you have a recipe for corruption. So the fake news lies about how bad the destruction is, as well as manipulating photos of survivors and people who are starving, not to mention ignoring the plentiful food. This is disinformation that would be expected of a totalitarian regime. Now, while Hamas is willing to sell out their own people, there are those in America who will also do this. The John Bolton raid. Roger Stone was effectively accused by the deep state of interfering with the Russia investigation. Even though the investigation started with fake news created by the Clinton campaign, which was weaponized by the Obama administration, CNN was on the ground when he was arrested on these trumped-up charges. When John Bolton was recently arrested, CNN was shocked. The host even remarked that they had him on as a guest the previous day. They were not told about this one in advance, because this arrest was about justice. John Bolton was suspected of having classified documents in his home, like the documents that Joe Biden had in his garage, or at Penn State, or Hillary Clinton had on an unsecured server. When they came for President Trump, all sorts of fake stories were made up, like how documents were flushed, or that documents were sprawled on the ground as opposed to being locked in a safe. Kash Patel, director of the FBI, has yet to fabricate any such ridiculous stories. However, while John Bolton is finally facing justice, President Trump once more earns the title of Teflon Don. The Teflon Don strikes again. President Trump gained the nickname Teflon Don because everything that the deep state uses to destroy him fails in the end. The word says that no weapon formed against us will prosper. To clarify, the word never says that no weapon will be formed, but that it will not prosper. A New York court threw out the bogus, trumped-up charge that would have brought a $500 million fine. Letitia James, who is accused of misrepresenting her own property, ran on a campaign of destroying President Trump. She failed, and I am enjoying watching her squirm. What we cannot forget is that the bank agreed to the amount of the loan, and the loan was repaid. Everyone walked away happy. Do you really think that the bank would have signed off on a loan without valuing the property themselves? Now President Trump is getting back the astronomical bail that was imposed. None of this was for justice, as this persecutor—
Don't you mean prosecutor? No!
—just wanted to bankrupt President Trump to stop him from running. This is one of the few charges against him that did not start with Hillary Clinton's malfeasance. At least Letitia James was original in her phony charges. Now, all of these victories of President Trump show why the Democratic Party may fall. The failing Democrats. Like I said at the end of the previous segment, the Democratic Party may fall.
One can only hope.
Registration for voters to the Democratic Party is at an all-time low, even according to the fake news. Conversely, Republicans are increasing in number. Now, without the Democrats around, the Libertarian Party can potentially fill the power vacuum. This would keep the Republicans in check. But this may be wishful thinking based on the poll of the week. Will the Democratic Party actually fall?
Only Poppins would know.
One reason that the Democratic ideology may fall is because they prioritize superficial traits over merit. DEI illiterates in college. The Florida illegal killed 3 people because he could not read the signs. This is a tragedy, but it is not just the illegals who are illiterate. A girl came to Hartford, Connecticut from Puerto Rico when she was just 6 years old. In 2024, she graduated from high school. While living the American dream,
Aren't we forgetting one teensy-weensy but ever so crucial little tiny detail?
she cannot read a single word or even write a sentence. Apparently, when it came to writing, she was just told to draw a picture. Her teachers passed her, despite her inability to read or write. From what I have found, it is not dyslexia or anything of the like. Now, she is in college. While I doubt anyone would hire her outside of a government job, because in the private sector, you actually need skills to work, this is a symptom of a much larger problem. Democrats want people in college even if they are not qualified, only so that they can check a few diversity boxes. Granted, a lot of people that the Democrats want to fill colleges are also not favorable to America. Burning American flags. We know that burning a flag celebrating sodomy is considered hate speech.
Fun fact, hate speech has never been defined by a court of law.
Now President Trump has passed an executive order mandating a 1-year stint in jail if someone burns an American flag. I, for one, am not sure if that is legal. But then again, the only people who tend to burn these flags hate America, and would probably also burn down cities at the same time. This may be a 3D chess move so that these people can just get arrested on something, and can actually be brought to court, not just bailed out by Kamala Harris. Then again, what would I know? I am just a cynic who makes online content. Speaking of rioting, let us go over to Chicago. Chicago rises up. Chicago is one of the most crime-ridden cities in the country. I am sure that there are many reasons. One is the Democratic leadership that does not actually want law enforcement for reasons known only to them. The other part is that it is made up largely of a certain demographic that is known to commit the vast majority of violent crimes. After Washington, D.C. was cleaned up and had its longest streak without a murder, 11 days, it just proves that the only thing necessary for law and order to flourish is prosecuting criminals. This is in stark contrast to the policy of the Democrats, where you can loot, riot, and steal as much as you want. And then Kamala Harris just bails you out. So why do I bring up Chicago in all of this? Aside from it being a crime-infested city, Chicago is next on President Trump's list of cities that need to be cleaned up. We know that there are only a few pockets of criminals who hide in liberal cities, and the national crime rate would go down.
One more thing.
The people of Chicago seem to want the National Guard, because they see the safety it brought to Washington, D.C. President Trump is taking action to protect Americans. However, Some people just want to stand in his way. Fraud at the Federal Reserve. Letitia James and Adam Schiff are both accused of doing the very same thing that President Trump was accused of doing. They are accused of mortgage fraud. As of the editing of this video, both are still considered innocent until proven guilty. Now, what does that have to do with the Federal Reserve? Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook has been accused of mortgage fraud. When the fake news discussed this on their panels, the first thing that they seemed to mention was her melanin and chromosomes, as if these were important qualifications for any real job. President Trump claims that he can fire her, something that has never been done before because of her gross misconduct. If President Trump succeeds, it will be proof that the Federal Reserve is under the jurisdiction of the president. If Cook succeeds in her inevitable lawsuit, the Federal Reserve will continue to be uninhibited. Cook and the other governors will then continue to make partisan decisions at the behest of the deep state.
So how do you define it?
Well, the way I would define the deep state is an increased willingness by more and more government civil servants to pursue political objectives rather than stand up for the values of the institution they're a part of. They are not neutral. They're not politically neutral.
These forces want everyone to be equally poor, and they also want us to be equally unhealthy. Just buy another seat. Remember a little while ago when the fake news associated exercising with Nazi ideology?
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Now the New York Times is recommending that people not jump into the fitness routine, suggested by Secretary of Health Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. That much is obvious, as you do not want to push yourself too hard by starting on the boss level. However, I cannot help but worry that there is a subtext here. Something tells me that this fake news outlet wants to discourage exercise altogether. Again. Meanwhile, Southwest Airlines is making overweight passengers buy both seats if they take up space for 2 seats. Naturally, fat people do not like that they have to pay for both of the seats that they are using, but they could exercise and eat healthy. I know a woman who is plus size because of a combination of glandular problems and trauma, and she can fit in my passenger seat. The people affected by this change are those who are obese because they have no self-control, or even concern for the inconvenience of other people. I'm just going to bet that all of these people who are complaining wore 2 or 3 masks for the safety of others.
Ironic.
Now this last article is very serious. I almost did not want to write this one as it is not favorable to my side, but I choose truth over teams. The Ax-Wielding Girl. A girl in Scotland brandished an axe and a knife against someone who is presumed to be a migrant there. As I have reported multiple times, these migrants clump together and target women and then abuse them. However, the man in question was from Bulgaria. I say this because major influencers such as Elon Musk jumped onto the story without getting all of the facts. It is not helping our side when we perpetuate fake news just like CNN. Either way, from what I can tell, the girl was initially arrested not for threatening an innocent man, but for having the weapons. As you know, in that part of the world, their weapon control laws are even worse than in America. This incident is certainly not going to help things move toward freedom. Maybe I'm just blowing smoke. Maybe I'm completely off my rocker, but that is just my opinion. And do not forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe for more. But before you go, on the left I have last week's video, but you may also enjoy the video on the right.